Hello Revolution students, and welcome back to another video on the Russian Revolution, area of study 1. In this video I am going to look at Alexander Kerensky and how he contributed to the October 1917 revolution. So let's get into it. He was the leader of the SRs in February 1917, and he also was one of the founding members of the provisional government when he came to power in March 1917. He was a member of both the Provisional Government and of the Petrograd Soviet as well. In the Provisional Government itself, he eventually became War Minister, and then on the 11th of July 1917, he became the Prime Minister of the Provisional Government. One of his big achievements was to effectively crush the July Days, which was that uprising which occurred in July 1917, which was instigated by the Bolsheviks as well as other revolutionary parties against the provisional government and its rule. It was a protest against the provisional government for not solving the various issues that the Russian people were facing at that time. The provisional government did, however, under Alexander Kerensky's leadership, it did crush the July Days. The Bolsheviks, as a consequence, lost quite a bit of support amongst the Russian population, and they only regained that when the Kornilov affair occurred a month later, which we'll look at later on. As the leader of the provisional government, Alexander Kerensky was unable to resolve these key issues, which are Lenin identified in three slogans: peace, bread and land. So peace, he was unable to bring an end to the war with the Germans and the Austrians. Bread, he was unable to resolve the food problems and feed the people. And land, he was unable to solve the land problem when the peasants did not have enough land to grow their food upon. As a consequence of not being able to solve peace, bread and land, he lost support for the BG amongst the Russian people. Another big failure of his was that he refused to organise elections for a constituent assembly until it was too late. He only did that on the 9th of August 1917, 4 months after the provisional government had come into power. By that stage, many of the Russian people had turned away from the provisional government and were looking towards the Soviet, the Petrograd Soviet, as an alternative power structure to overthrow or to lead Russia rather than the provisional government. Another one of his actions that contributed to October 1917 was his response to the Kornilov affair. So Alexander Kerensky, he appointed General Kornilov as Commander-in-Chief of the Russian military, and very soon after Kornilov was appointed by Kerensky, Kornilov decided to march upon St. Petersburg and try to overthrow both the Soviet and Kerensky feared the provisional government. Kerensky and the provisional government did not have many troops to defend St. Petersburg against Kornilov's march, so they called upon various revolutionary groups to help defend St. Petersburg, the Bolsheviks being one of them. And as a consequence of this, Kerensky released various Bolshevik leaders from prison, Trotsky and others, for example. He also armed the Bolsheviks. Those arms the Bolsheviks actually held onto after the Kornilov affair, and they used them to overthrow the provisional government in October 1917. A consequence of the Kornilov affair was that it increased Bolshevik support and contributed to the Bolsheviks gaining control of the St. Petersburg and Moscow Soviets by September 1917. And you can see there I have put the MRC etc. in brackets. Once the Bolsheviks gained control of the St. Petersburg and Moscow Soviets, they were able to set up the MRC, the Military Revolutionary Committee, which was a subcommittee of the Soviet, and the Military Revolutionary Committee pretty much controlled the military within St. Petersburg, and the Bolsheviks, through their control of the St. Petersburg Soviet and the MRC, used the MRC to then direct the military to overthrow the provisional government in October 1917. The Kornilov affair increased membership within the Bolsheviks dramatically during this period. The final and very significant act of Alexander Kerensky prior to the October 1917 revolution was his decision to close down the Bolshevik newspapers Pravda and Izvestia on the 23rd of October. And also after that he tried to arrest, you can see there, Bolshevik leaders. This gave Lenin and the Bolshevik leaders the excuse they needed to begin the uprising against, or the insurrection against, the provisional government and overthrow it and Alexander Kerensky, which began on the 24th of October 1917. Okay, let's get into some historical interpretations now about Alexander Kerensky's contribution to the October 1917 revolution. The first historical interpretation you can see there is from Richard Pipes, and Pipes writes, Kerensky was Milyukov's opposite. If his rival was all theory and logic, he was impulse and emotion. Thanks to his feel for the popular mood, he emerged early as an idol of the revolution, the February Revolution. Thanks to his emotionalism, he proved incapable of coping with the responsibilities which he had assumed. So Richard Pipes is arguing there that Kerensky did not have the qualities, the ability to actually lead Russia out of its plight at that time. And the second historical interpretation is from Orlando Figes, and he writes, during the final weeks of the provisional government, his, Kerensky's, behaviour began to resemble that of the last Tsar. Both men refused to recognise the revolutionary threat to their own authority. With Nicholas, such complacency had stemmed from hopeless despair and fatalistic resignation. But with Kerensky, it was rather the result of his own foolish optimism. Kerensky's nationwide popularity during the early revolution had gone to his head. He had come to believe in his own providential calling to lead the people to freedom, and like the Tsar confined to his winter palace, was sufficiently removed from their real situation not to question his faith. Okay, so there are two historical interpretations about Kerensky and his contribution to October 1917. I hope you have found this video useful for your study of the Russian Revolution, Area of Study 1, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.